So today we're going to talk about revision. Now, does anybody know what the revising process is? Anybody? Okay. Miss Dunn, what is the revising process?
Would that be the process where you get all the mistakes out of your paper?
That would. That is correct. So a simple definition of this would be looking at what you have written to see how you can improve it. Because this is whenever you're trying to take your paper and you're just trying to get it to that A+ status. Okay, so how many of you are actually planning on going to college after you graduate? Okay, that's a pretty good amount. So y'all really need to pay attention to this because I can guarantee you that doing research papers is a big part of college. So you need to go ahead and learn this early so that you can actually do it very well whenever you get to college. So I made a little handout for y'all. So just take this and pass it around. And it's a revising checklist of what you can do once you've actually completed your paper. And what you need to do is just go through the different checklists, checkpoints, and stuff, and actually look at whether you have completed each little task. Okay? So, going through the checklist, our first thing we need to address is when are you going to revise? And you're not going to need to revise directly after you complete your paper, because once you get your paper done, I know whenever I'm doing papers that I am really just spent. I am tired, I'm stressed usually, especially if it's a long paper. So the best thing you want to do is just take some time away from your paper, and it's really going to actually help you. Because if you take time away from it, you'll be less protective of it. If you take time away from a paper that you've spent so much time on and you've just put your heart and soul into it, if you take extra hours away from it, then you'll be ready to come back and you'll be refreshed. And also, you may end up having some kind of epiphany whenever you actually take time away from your paper. Thinking, I've done this paper and I think it's really good, but then you all of a sudden have an idea that you really want to include, and it's going to get you to that A+. And also, you're going to be ready to make changes because you're going to come back and you're going to be refreshed. Okay, going through the checklist. Number one is, does the essay have a clear and concise thesis? Okay, your thesis is a couple of sentences. It's typically either 1 or 2 sentences that actually says what your paper is about, and it says what you're going to be arguing about, basically. And your thesis is typically in your introduction. It should be easy to find and easy to pick out, and it should be strong. It should be able just to stand by itself. And a good thing that you can actually use with your thesis and your introduction is have a friend read your intro. And if your friend can actually pick out the strongest sentence, and that sentence is your thesis statement, then you're good to go. Your introduction and your thesis need to be one and the same. They need to actually coincide together harmoniously. Okay, number 2. Second one is, does the introduction create interest in the paper? Your introduction needs to be catchy. It should make the reader actually want to read more. It should make them want to read on into your paper and see what your entire argument is. So a big thing with the introduction, whenever you're thinking about that, is can the reader get a clear idea of what your paper is about just from that one little paragraph? Okay? Okay, is there a clear plan and a sense of organization? Now, this should have actually been evident whenever you're doing your drafting, and from just reading your paper, the reader should be able to see that you planned this out, that you went through the drafting process, and that you spent time on it. It typically follows a type of outline. Research papers are a little bit more than just your typical 5-paragraph papers, so you're not going to follow that kind of outline, but you'll have an outline for what part of your argument you want to make. Okay? Is each paragraph clearly related to the thesis? A big thing with this is that everything in your paper should be going back and just supporting your thesis. So if you can put your thesis at the beginning of your paragraph and your paragraph makes sense, then you're perfectly fine. You don't need any information in your paper that is not actually relevant. And you need to take all the unneeded information out. Okay. Second one, let's see. Are your sentences clear and direct? Your sentences need to be very straight to the point. They should be able to be understood on the first time that anybody is reading them. They need to vary in sentence structure, so you just don't need to have a lot of short, choppy sentences. You don't need to have run-ons. So this point of the checklist is focusing more on your sentence structure and your grammar and stuff. Okay? Does the essay have an effective conclusion? Okay, your conclusion is also a very important part of your paper. It is your last paragraph, of course, but it should be a strong enough paragraph that the reader is left with a sense of ending and that they know that you are done with your argument. And it should make a concrete ending to your paper. And, of course, your conclusion also needs to be just as strong. The two strongest paragraphs in your paper are your conclusion and your introduction, along with your supporting evidences in your body. Okay, finally, please check your grammar. This is a big thing whenever you are revising. A big thing that a lot of students have a problem with is that they rely too much on spell check, and you can't do that. I promise you that the spell check does not always know the difference between effective and affective, so you can't trust that 100%. So you need to actually go through, read your paper very carefully and very slowly, and make sure that everything is actually correct. Finally, just a couple of final pointers. If you're trying to proofread and you're working towards that A+ that everybody wants, you really want to actually go through and read in each paragraph individually, especially if you're working with a very long paper. If your paper is like 9 or 10 pages, then you're going to want to need to take it at least one page at a time, otherwise you're going to get overwhelmed. And finally, the biggest thing that I feel that will probably help y'all is being able to just read it out loud to yourself. Because if you read it out loud, you'll be able to actually catch how the reader is going to interpret your writing. You'll be able to catch if you use phrases a lot. Because I know that there are phrases that just get used a lot, words that get used a lot. Say that you have a lot of even those completed throughout your paper. You'll realize that when you're proofreading, and you'll want to change it. Okay? And here's your final checklist. Is your thesis strong? Do you have a strong intro and a strong conclusion? Do you have a clear transition between each paragraph? Do you have a variety of sentence structures? And have you carefully proofread? And finally, have you checked your grammar and your spelling? So if you go through this, if you've done all of these different components of your checklist, then you should be able to submit your paper and you'll hopefully get that A+ that everybody wants.